Well, I was born in Brownsville in the 50s, and I lived on 45th and Forestville, which is a little short block, which is a great residential neighborhood. After the restrictive covenant was lifted, we moved to Chatham, and I grew up in Chatham, and then when I went to college, came back, lived in Hyde Park, raised my kids in Hyde Park, and when they were grown, quickly zipped back to Brownsville.
Really? What prompted your move right back to Bronzeville?
Well, it was really in my soul. I mean, I remember as a kid with my daddy walking. We didn't have a car, it was like 1952, 53. And we didn't have a car, so we walked the neighborhood, and I remember walking the neighborhood. And one of my favorite memories is going out on Halloween and with Daddy, and we would go to the stores on 47th Street, and they didn't give you candy, they gave you pennies. So you might have an apple and a whole bag of pennies. And I just remember that. So it just stuck with me. My father's family lived in Brownsville. They owned homes in Brownsville in the 50s. So it's just something that's hard to explain, but it's in my soul. I really believe in diverse community. So my mantra has been, I've always lived in diverse communities. I look at Hyde Park, having spent 20 years in Hyde Park, as sort of a model of how communities can work and how residents can own their community, control what goes on in their communities. So I think that's something that we really want to be able to do. I want us to keep our African American heritage as we are diverse. So once again, my mantra has been, I want to have a diverse community. I just don't want to be the minority this time. Maintain the culture and the individuality as an African American community, and to do all of that, you got to have economic development. I mean, you got to have jobs. You got to have. I am a founder of the Brownsville Retail Initiative, and our goal is to create walkable retail corridors in Brownsville. I mean, your whole sense of community happens up and down those streets. 7th Street, in the past. We had 43rd Street in the past, and to try to figure out what the new commercial strip looks like. Commercial strips define communities. I mean, you can, if you think about driving through communities, you drive down commercial strips. Now you can have great housing, great residential, but if you don't, the only thing that gets you out the car unless you're going to a destination is somebody's house, it's the commercial strip. And so you sort of look at the commercial strip and see what, so you see what Andersonville is. How many people are driving down the side streets, everybody's on Clark Street or whatever it's like. This is a great place to be. So that's very important to the economic development of the community. Part of my concern is that we maintain the flavor of the community. I think it's a challenge because the price points are a lot higher, but people's salaries haven't zipped up with the price points. So if we could have a diverse, thriving community with a African American historical base, cultural historical base, with good schools, lots of arts and culture, good economic development, it can be like your Hyde Park, but it would demonstrate that it doesn't have to be University of Chicago based. It doesn't have to be white based. It can be minority based, and African American in particular, because we have particular perception issues, So if that could happen, just imagine if that could happen. That's why I talk about the promise of Brownsville. The promise of Brownsville is bigger than what it is to be here. It also projects what could be. I mean, I know how the cycles work, and how the gentrification works, but it doesn't have to be that. So, I mean, if people, we could be a model for what a diversified African American cultural based community can be, and that would be great for the city. Okay.
Cool.
Amazing.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
A big part of the work while I was at the Arts Alliance is to get artists and creatives to lean in and to get more actively involved in public life and to really flex their activism muscles and to give voice to public policies that support the arts in people's lives, schools, and communities. I am a big believer that there's a strong connection between artistry and citizenry, that creating and sharing art is one of the most powerful ways to strengthen our democracy and promote vibrant communities. And the work that I'm in now is really around political reform and public policy and how we can change the rules that govern political participation to make them more fair and functional and inclusive. Also, a big part of the work that I'm involved in now is getting more people, average people, to tune in and get actively involved in civic life, to climb the ladder of civic engagement. I'm a proud Chicagoan and resident of Bronzeville. I've been in the neighborhood since the early 2000s. What attracted me to the neighborhood is the rich history that exists in Bronzeville. It's a mecca for Black creativity and entrepreneurship and ingenuity. We have these stately boulevards. We have just the architectural artistry of the homes, these handsome, muscular, beautiful gray stones and brownstones, and then the people, the artists and intellectuals and businessmen and women that call Bronzeville home is stunning. I think you'd be hard pressed to find any other neighborhood in the world that has as rich history and legacy as Bronzeville does. I live in a home that was owned by a legendary jazz man named Sonny Stitt. I live right next door to the home of Dr. Daniel Hale Williams, who performed the world's first successful open heart surgery. I live around the corner from the home of Louis Armstrong. Bronzeville has such a textured history of creativity, and that's one of the many reasons why I'm proud to call Bronzeville home. I think there's a really powerful connection between the arts and creative expression and the Bronzeville community. I think one of the things that I really appreciate about the neighborhood is the public art. 2017 is the year of public art for Chicago. Bronzeville is home to some of the world's most famous public art installations, and I think about the Wall of Respect and the impact that that had here in Chicago and around the world. I think there's a really strong connection between the arts and community building. When you think about how you build and foster a sense of community and connection, you do that by getting people up off of their couches, away from their TV screens and their iPads and their iPhones, You bring them together for shared experience. You create opportunities for people to look each other in the eye. You create openings where people can interact, and that's something that the arts, it provides that platform. And there's such a rich history in Bronzeville around the role of culture and the role of culture in creating an identity for a community and bringing people together, that it's exciting to think about the future for Bronzeville. And it's one that I think will be powered by community development and cultural preservation, and really elevating the role of the arts to help tell the story of Bronzeville. I think it's also a place that fosters civic pride. And that's something that's so important for our city, is a sense of connection and pride. And we joked earlier about the Cubs, but how flying the W puts us in a happier space. Right? It allows us to really, just for a moment, move beyond the negative narratives that exist around our city. Foster civic pride by lifting up our often untold, undertold stories. And that's the really exciting part about a better Bronzeville, is we have so many wonderful stories to tell.
With Bronzeville, I grew up in the neighborhood. Grandfather lives in the neighborhood. Went to school in the neighborhood, and then I have a very personal history with the neighborhood. Whereas my ancestors were part of the community. My great-great-grandfather, Anthony Overton, was the first black business mogul. He had multiple enterprises in the neighborhood, which employed folks and provided goods and services to folks, included in which was the second nationally chartered black bank. He had the Anthony Overton High Brown Overton Cosmetics. So he was the first person to provide cosmetics for women of color. He had an insurance company. He had a newspaper, and then other, smaller assets in the community, which facilitated the community. I think that what we are is kind of on the uptrend of a cycle of trying to bring Bronzeville back for what it once was. It was once, the Black Belt. This is where African Americans were confined in this city. It once had 6 times the current population, I think it was. And, it seems, even in the conversations that I have had with folks since sort of its demise, every generation has participated in an effort to try and bring Bronzeville back. Bronzeville is, like many places in this country, relevant, very relevant to the cultural implications and the history of many communities. Bronzeville was home to artists and business folks. It produced people who were educated. It produced and housed, the working class. It was very diverse, and it is an important part of our history and our cultural experience as Black Americans from the Midwest and from Chicago. And so those types of relationships, be it economic and cultural, I think were vital, and because they were vital, they continue to be vital. They continue to be a part of the DNA of our cultural experience. We acknowledging that, strengthening that, highlighting that, I think above all else will have cultural and social implications for folks in my generation who have no idea that this place existed and what it meant. And so, it becomes a conversation of, well, you can be not, Obama shows that you can be black and be the president, but it shows that you can be black and you can be a successful business owner. You can be a successful doctor. You can be a successful whatever, because this community existed, but it has essentially been washed from history.
What do you envision for the future of Bronzeville?
Well, as a millennial, we're a new type of hippies. we are we have hearts that bleed a lot, and so I envision a community. I envision a community that is in line and consistent with a larger vision for the world, which is one where unity actually exists, and it doesn't find itself limited by not just the superficial things, but even the deeper things, whether those deeper things are larger religious and cultural and social differences, and vehement differences, but that we find that our larger unity is woven through our willingness and our desire to just have love for one another. And so I see a space where people are not biased or stereotyped by outsiders or insiders. I see a space where all dreams, as cliche as that is, can be actualized on some level. But I think that this is a vision that is in line with a global vision that a lot of people in my age group have, and that I hopefully we will one day see. To be frank with you, people just from that community, it's hard to see a vision of something other than what it has always been to you if you've never seen anything else. And that's sort of the root, I think, of the current problem that just keeps feeding into itself. It doesn't need to be exclusive, but it does and should be explicit about its historical inclusivity, whereas folks historically were excluded from elsewhere in the city, and that in focusing on that and uplifting that and looking at that as something that is a powerful statement and a beautiful statement.
I really think that Bronzeville is the best geographic area in Chicago right now and has the most growth potential, given we're blocked in by the lake, the Dan Ryan, South Loop, and Hyde Park, and that there's so much opportunity for development. It's probably has the most growth potential.
Gotcha. How does the perception of the neighborhood match up with the reality now that you're in it and that you are a homeowner?
I'm probably a little jaded because, I'm a homeowner, so of course I think it's great, and I'm like, yeah, everybody come. I think just overall being on the south side of Chicago, we have that violence bubble that hangs over us, so it's kind of hard to get people out of that. Also, we don't have a lot of retail offerings or food offerings, diverse food offerings, so it's kind of hard to convince people to come over, but we do have a few. So it's like, we got some gems, you just gotta come and find out. So I don't know how those two perceptions mirror each other. I think it's just, it's not as bad as you would think. It's the best I can say. I would love for the main streets to have themes, like from 35th, 39th, 43rd, 47th, 51st, 55th, to each have like kind of their own identity. So you knew you could go on 47th for blues and music and culture. You knew you can go on 43rd for food and whatever. I just wish it was a little more centralized and a lot more retail options. Given that there are like 3,000 vacant lots right now in Bronzeville, we have an opportunity to build, yes, 3,000, 1,500 or so are city owned. So there's a lot of growth opportunity, and I think if those with means would take a risk, let's say, and develop, we could really create like a model city for like the new America, a new Chicago, where wealth is dispersed and we can have diverse economic communities, diverse racial communities, diverse with age, because we have a lot of old people, we have a lot of young people, and it would really be a model neighborhood. And so I think it'd be really important to get people in the community already engaged about the community, a lot more pride across the masses, not just the organizers, but the masses. We love Bronzeville. Bronzeville is, get that kind of euphoric sensation going on and that type of pride, just like you would with maybe a college. Oh, hey, Bronzeville United, this is us. then reach out to the rest of the city, because what I've learned just from looking at history, what happens is when outsiders, whoever they may be, different cultures, different countries, whomever, come in, and if you don't have a strong foundation already, and sometimes even if you do have a strong foundation already, that gets dissipated. And then there's a lot of hurt feelings around that, like, oh, it's them versus us now, versus welcome to our community, enjoy what we have, you know, go tell your friends, come back. It's more so like, oh no, you know, we're being invaded. And to, I think, preempt that, you know, is have a really strong base, like, yeah, Brian, now when you come, now you're a part of this, and it's not the other way around. So I mean, something I also battle with is feeling that, oh, you're not validated until an outsider comes in and tells you you're validated. So I think if it was more internal first, it'd be adopted more widespread. What I learned from living in the area, doing a little research before I decided to buy in the area, there are a lot of organizations in Bronzeville, lots and lots and lots. And as I said, everybody who lives here for the most part loves it, really wants it to be great. However, we have our different kind of sections. You got the Gap area, you got 35th to 39th area, you got the 47th. It's a little bit zoned, and everybody has kind of their different focus, and sometimes those overlap. What we lack is a cohesion. It's fine to still have your own group and your interest in what you want to do, but we are much powerful. We have more power if we would have some cohesion in our numbers and we're not overlapping so much on the same issues. We all want better schools and more food options and more safety and more culture and more activities, but if I'm just 10 people working it over here and I'm 20 people working it over here and never do we talk, we're missing out on a lot of opportunities to build something really great. I'm passionate about Bronzeville. I'm really passionate about Bronzeville really for his historical context. This was the place where we had to be. As African Americans leaving the South, leaving one subjugated area, one oppressed area, this was the place we had to be. You couldn't be anywhere else in the city. You had to be here. And for me, it would be a sad day if I wake up and there are Black people who live here, or we're not the majority, or our culture is being washed away, which it easily could be done if we don't have people who hold on to it. So we have a lot of different converging factors going on at the same time, with so many people leaving Chicago in general, with people leaving Illinois in general. So with that, you leave in a lot of history, and there's no one to pick up the baton and keep it going. And so I really want it to be important that maybe we could self-gentrify. Again, being a model city where you have doctors and lawyers staying next to the person who works at the Marianos. And that's possible because there are so many vacant lots already available that you could build up the housing market and kind of put some responsible policies in place to at least give people a chance. I'm a capitalist, I get it, you want to make money, but I think you could do it responsibly and equitably for people who've really been here and who've suffered through all these different changes over the generations, and then to all of a sudden, it's finally nice, and you put them out.
Yeah.
Nothing more important, because I tell you, it's important in that our children see us operating businesses. I recall the day as a child and going to the corner store and going to the newsstand, and I saw people who looked like me. Not only did I see them, but in conversation, they were encouraging to see, you know, people in your own community running their own business. And so that's my mission, to be that person that I saw. And what I learned from just being in business is that you don't know who's watching you, and you don't know what impact you have on people. One young lady stopped me right on the corner here at 43rd Nellis and Norman's, and what she said was so profound. She said, "Thank you, Mr. Norman, for fixing up our neighborhood." She literally brought me to tears, because this is someone who you would perceive as paying attention to nothing, but yet she sees everything, and it has an impact. So with that, I realized that, Norman, there are many people watching you, and so you have to be the best. in whatever you're doing and be as encouraging to folk as all possible. Because am, I guess, a representation of possibly what folk aspire to be. My vision has been consistent in that I look to see the Bronzeville community thriving with business and entertainment. I don't see this community no different than the near North Side, than the Hyde Park, the 53rd Street, where millions of dollars have been infused into making it. I won't use the G word, but making it work. Okay. And I know the possibilities are real. And we, as community residents, I've come to realize it's going to be incumbent on us to make it happen. Because I believe that the agenda of those who are in power is to design it to the benefit of someone else. And my intention is to be around here, to celebrate it, to encourage other people of color to invest in your own community. And I don't just talk it, I live it. In order to make the surrounding communities whole, this has to come into play. And so it is to their benefit to invest, to assure that Bronzeville works, so that we have just this whole slate of opportunity and not just pockets in our community. Here, I find it very interesting that people are making the investment to live in Bronzeville, but they're not making the investment to support the local business in Bronzeville. And I'm saying, why do you come or choose to pay these large amounts of money for housing structures, pay these huge taxes, and then not focus on growing the business that is in the community that you've invested in? Because when you grow those businesses, you grow your property values, you grow your community. So please, in the words of American Express, shop small.
We have to find ways of revitalizing this community. And revitalizing this community necessarily means finding ways of increasing the incomes, increasing the amenities in this community. So what often happens as a result of that is the community becomes more attractive to folks from outside the community who want to move in. That's a wonderful thing. It's great to be viewed as being attractive. It's great to have a draw to be a draw to other folks. Mm-hmm. I think what's critically important is that as we do that, as we make the community richer, more attractive, that we provide opportunities, that we provide bountiful opportunities to folks who are already here. So that as real estate prices go up, as taxes go up, that we've created the basis for folks who are here to afford that and in fact to flourish in that environment. So the critical thing about revitalization of the community is engaging folks who live there, who live here, so that they can have opportunities to improve their economic situation and that they can be the primary beneficiaries of the improvement of the community.
Great.
I think one thing I'd like to just emphasize is the need to create opportunity for wealth creation for folks who live in or have very deep connections, deep roots in Bronzeville. And that's one of the things we work very hard to do. We work hard to identify entrepreneurs, be they for-profit, not-for-profit, social entrepreneurs, who have acquired the skills but may not have all of the capital to establish enterprises in Bronzeville. Because in creating such local ownership and creating such local opportunities for wealth creation. When we do that, we lift up the community. We lift up all of the community. It's difficult because the community has lost so much capital over the years for a number of different reasons. Most recently, the housing crisis that precipitated the Great Recession. So it's a very challenging task, but I think we all have to work together to figure out how to provide opportunity, entrepreneurial opportunity locally, and critical to that task to provide access to the capital that is needed by these entrepreneurs who are trying to move us all forward. I just want to welcome everyone to Bronzeville. I want to invite everyone to come and visit. We are on the path to revitalization, but there already is so much to see and do in Bronzeville. If you look deeply, our initiatives include a biking initiative that does bike rides 3 Sundays of the month. To every ride is different. They're around art, architecture, sustainability. But even within that, every ride is different. There is so much to see and to do. There's other great facilities in Bronzeville, from Gallery Gauchard to Blanc Gallery to Peaches. These are things that we're not directly involved with, but that have been brought forward by other members of this community. Norm's Bistro, there's a new restaurant right across the street. I mean, there's so many things in Bronzeville to see and do if one takes the time to look a bit more deeply. And we really need for Chicagoans to spend a bit of their time engaging in this community and communities like this. Unfortunately, we've got this huge divide in Chicago where, for a number of different reasons, folks have separated themselves into different enclaves and in many cases don't feel comfortable in coming to communities like Bronzeville. But we've also seen, and I'm very encouraged by this, by things like Open House Chicago, which for a couple of days a year brings thousands of visitors to Bronzeville, and I think for virtually all those visitors, they see things that they didn't expect, and that adds great value to them. So we need to build on those kinds of platforms. We need to invest a bit of our time to figure out how we can engage in Bronzeville and communities like it in order to move all of Chicago forward.